In today's episode of Today in World War II, February 15th, the Finns completely abandoned the Mannerheim Line. The Admiral Hipper, the German battlecruiser, returns back to France with a very successful cruise under its belt. Singapore officially surrenders to the Japanese. The U.S. Air Force only takes 1.15 tons of bombs to destroy a historic medieval, monastery on the on the Italian front. Speaking of fronts, the Germans launched their last offensive ever on the Eastern Front, and finally, the United States Sixth Army lands on Bataan 3 years after it had surrendered. Let's get started. All right, so on February 15th, 1940, Finnish commander Field Marshal Mannerheim uh, finally gave the order. All Finnish units needed to withdraw from the Mannerheim Line. It was just being breached. They needed to regroup, retreat, regroup, and continue resistance. I can just tell you this as a requiem to the Mannerheim Line. Wow. I mean, what they were able to accomplish in the 2.5 months that line was there over under overwhelming odds and material, troops, artillery, tanks. Boy, mighty Finland, the Finnish lion, they gave much more than they got, and they still weren't done yet. I mean, the war was not over yet, but the end game was coming. I've been talking about this for the last 2 or 3 weeks in my videos, but we're gonna walk through this as it develops, and I'll narrate it and give you my takes on it. But it was sad but heroic, nevertheless. It's just too bad that their allies, Sweden, the Brits, the French, nobody helped, significantly speaking, right? Nobody helped. Just some volunteers trickled in, but that was it. Ironically, the one nation that helped them the most was Germany. That's pretty sad. It's sad commentary. What's not a sad commentary is if you subscribe to my channel, and by becoming my subscriber, by adding to the total of my subscribers as it grows, that's going to make the algorithm sit up and take notice and say, hey, we need to show this to more people. And so if you can do that, I would be eternally grateful. Thanks. On February 15th, 1941, the German cruiser Admiral Hipper returned from a short but very successful cruise into the harbor at Brest, France. It managed to sink 8 Allied ships, totaling 34,000 tons. Now, that's not going to be something that's going to turn the war against the British, but every little bit helped. But we're in February of 41. The days of the German surface navy being any kind of a threat to the Brits is coming to a close. They got about another year or so to go before the window closes. But while they were able to make hay, they were making hay, and the Admiral Hipper had a very good history. It took out a lot of merchant vessels. This captain seemed to be pretty smart in avoiding clashes with the Royal Navy and just going after that low-hanging fruit. That was pretty much the motto. If I was going to go back and invent or draw or create a shield or a logo and a brand for the German surface fleet, it would be only go after the low-hanging fruit. Let's put it that way, okay? And the lowest of all low-hanging fruits for you would be to like my channel and leave a comment, because it'll take you 30 seconds max to click the button with a thumbs up and then leave just a short little comment. I mean, it requires nothing out of your busy schedule, but it has a disproportionate value to me to get the algorithm on my side to show my material to more people. So I thank you in advance. On February 15th, 1942, not a really good day for the Brits. Churchill overrode General Wavell's refusal to allow the general of the Commonwealth and British forces in Singapore, Arthur Percival, to surrender the Singapore. He finally said, yes, let's do this, which was ended up being the biggest capitulation of British military in the history of their military. It was a tough pill to swallow, but on 11:30 in the morning on this date, white flag was sent to the Japanese, so they wanted to surrender. The Japanese required General Percival to appear personally. He signed the surrender document, and it was done. Unfortunately for the military, the soldiers, the sailors, the pilots, their horror was just beginning because they were going to spend the next 3 years in Changi prison. Some of the enlisted men would be transferred to Burma to work on the Burma airline railroad, and it was going to be torture and starvation and humiliation for those who survived. And it was just not a good thing. But that's what happened when you lose the Japanese. You're lucky you didn't get bayoneted and massacred immediately. On on February 15th, 1944, the American Air Force got the word from General Mark Clark that they needed to go ahead and destroy the monastery at Monte Cassino. The troops, the generals, had been saying that the Germans were using the monastery as to put artillery observers over there to direct fire against them. The roads to Rome were covered by German artillery, behind the hills and so forth. And there was just no way they were going to be able to, break through the Gustav line and get to Rome without taking Monte Cassino. It's disputed as to whether the Germans ever had artillery observers there or not. But what I can say is that once the monastery was destroyed by bombing, they were sent there then, and they moved troops in then into the ruins to fight. So it's questionable as to whether this had any effect at all, other than destroying a priceless piece of architecture. So no, the jury's still out on it, I think. On January 15th, 1945, the Germans launched Operation Solstice. Why is this, significant? It's a footnote in history. Most of what I give you is a footnote to history. Otherwise, I would just be talking about the main battles. I find it much more interesting to get into the minutia of the war and give context to how every little piece of the mosaic turned into the entire war. In this case, why is this significant? It's the last offensive they ever made on the Eastern Front. Spoiler alert, it did not work. Of course, it failed. The only benefit, I suppose, that it gave to the Germans was that it did force the Soviets to delay the launch of their final offensive against Berlin. They were going to start it in February. This attack delayed it until April. So you delayed the inevitable by a couple months. That's it. So not even a couple months, maybe 6 weeks. Finally, on January 15th, 1945, in the Philippines, the United States Sixth Army landed in Mariveles, in Bataan, and they were able to take the airfield there, which was important. They want to keep getting those land-based bombers in there, bombers and fighters, I should say. But symbolically, it was very important because 3 years earlier, not quite 3 years, the Americans had to surrender and had to go through the Bataan Death March. And symbolically, it was important. The Americans invaded, and now we're sending not the Germans, I'm sorry, the Japanese on their own death march to honoring the emperor by dying an inglorious death. So thank you very much for watching this video. I appreciate it, and I can't wait to show you another one tomorrow.